In this lesson, I wanted to point out what might happen if you have a really big data set, which is sometimes the case, especially in education. You might get a really big data set out of a system or out of an assessment program that has a lot of columns of data. So this is a large data set. I've cleaned it up, and it's just a random set of data that's been modified so that there's no personal information. But notice that this data set includes a lot of columns, all the way over to column CF. And the one I want to point out specifically is the column BY. So I'm wanting to query this data and pull back a little bit of information. And this is one of the great things about using a query. I don't really want to scroll and look at all this information. There's a few of these columns I want to look at. Let me lock this first row here, so if I scroll I can see that. But I want to pull back some data here on just some of the columns. So over here in this query, I've written a query, and notice I've had to, because I want to include the column BY, which when we look here is this column of looks like an alternate contact phone number. And I want to include that in my query, but if I just, I've already done this, but here's what happens if you just decided to include that particular column. So I wanted to have B, C, X, A, F, and BY. I wanted those columns. And I'm also doing a filter where the date is greater than 2012. We've gone over how to filter on dates already, and notice I'm having to do it with this where the D, the birth date, is greater than, and then I have to put it in this format for it to work. But let me hit enter here. And notice I get a value error. And when I mouse over that and look at that, wow, what is happening here? Well, the issue is it encountered by, and by is a word that we use in essence, group by. So when the query finds this word by, it doesn't know what to do. So we have to escape that with the backquote, which is the key to the left of the one key on your keyboard. And I have to escape it both at the beginning and the end of it. And now when I hit enter, you can escape that. Now this particular error caught me by surprise one day. I was trying to select some data from a large data set like this, and it took me a long time to figure out how to avoid that problem. So it's an important feature of query, but notice what it's allowing us to do. We have a very large data set, lots of columns, and I don't want to look at all of this data, but I can, let's say I do want to add in one particular row. Again, I can do this. Maybe I want to start with column F, and now I can do that. And that allows you to resort your data in a different order than is presented in your large data set. And that's one of the beauties of the query. I can order this however I want. But be careful if you have a column that is column BY. And then in this case, we're filtering on date, where D, column D, our date, is greater than. And when you try to do this, let's say if you looked at the data here and tried to use just that format, of course it doesn't work because you're using the wrong format. So we have to use date, and then in this format, YYY, MMDD, with those hyphens. And then it works, and we can pull back our data.